Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video we're going to continue our historical analysis of clandestine service, bank, anthropology, Hollywood, the leader of social engineering content for the world, for the whole world, for the one world order. Not to be confused with the New World Order, because there's only been one world order ever. Anyway, we're going to go back to Woodrow Wilson, who was the 28th President of the United States. He was born on December 28th, 1856. We're not going to go quite that far back, but he became president on March 4th, 1913. He was president for 8 years, 2 terms. Almost immediately after his presidency, Congress signed the Federal Reserve Act on December 23rd, 2013. So about 9 months after he took the oath of office, we had the third incarnation of a central bank for U.S. currency dollar. There have been 2 previous central banks. You shouldn't get too hung up on the concept of central banks because I'm an expert on that subject. I audited several world's class largest banks. I understand the kind of perverted relationship there is with the central bank. It is a bookie operation. They, in theory, really have no assets. They have no authority. They're basically a diversion. They're a red herring. They do have buildings. There are 12 Federal Reserve districts in the United States of America. There are 12 districts. That's really all you need to know about the central bank known as the Fed. It has no bearing with the United States government. And the reason that it doesn't is because there is no United States government. There's no Constitution. There's no Bill of Rights. There's no Supreme Court. There are no superior courts. There are no 50 states. There are only banks and anthropology planning. That's all there is. And the banks like to set things up by districts. You know, like the Hunger Games, the districts. There are 12 districts in the United States. There are lots of districts throughout the world. The district is where the banks are planned to extend credit or to deny credit, because that is how the anthropology planners function. If money is lent to build roads, highways, cul-de-sacs, military bases, then it will be lent. If they want to plant roses in a downtown area or create a park called Will Rogers Park and Gardens, they can do so. They just provide the credit to do so through municipal bonds or treasury auctions, which the banks 100% control. There are no nations, there are no peoples, and there really are no religions. There's only the illusion that there is. And those are all pacification and control theories and tools. So if people believe they're part of a country or part of a church or part of a religion, they tend to not pick up a sword and go after a banker, because that's what it's all about, is about protecting the bankers through magic tricks. Well, anyway, let me tell you that everything in Beverly Hills, Holmby Hills, Bel Air, Benedict Canyon, Coldwater Canyon, Franklin Canyon, Stone Canyon, Laurel Canyon, the Hollywood sign, the Griffith Park Observatory, the Disney Mansion located at 4053 Woking Way. These are all military-designed neighborhoods and cul-de-sacs. It's loaded with cul-de-sacs. And for the most part, there are no sidewalks. I would say 90% of the homes I'm talking about do not have sidewalks. There's a couple of exceptions. The house where Bugsy Siegel, Ben Siegel, was shot 9 times with an M1 carbine semi-automatic rifle, military, that had sidewalks. In case you are wondering what the address is, we're going to cover that later. I'll give you the specific address. 810 North Linden Drive, 810 North Linden Drive. It's a 7-bedroom home that Ben Seigel did not own. The media will tell you that it was being rented by Virginia Hill, who was his girlfriend. Well, I think she's 5 times divorced, and she's a sugar baby, and let's just say that they were dating, okay? So, and she doesn't have the money to rent, an $18 million mansion in Beverly Hills by today's prices. So it was a provisional home that Virginia Hill was, I guess, allowed to have at 810 North Linden Drive, and he was shot 4 times in the head and 5 times in his body on the date of June 20th, 1946. 1946, so after World War II had ended the year previously. Remember, we had the surrender of the Germans, known as the Nazis, and that occurred on May 5th, 1945, and then the Japanese surrendered in August 1945. I think the date on that's a little sketchy. They officially declared the war over on September 1st or 2nd, 1945, but I believe the Japanese surrendered on August 14th, 1945. You should know that just before the Japanese surrendered, after the Germans had surrendered, but before the Japanese surrendered, our friend Howard Hughes of the Hughes Tool Company and the Hughes Aircraft military contractor, clandestine service controlled subcontractor for our banks, Howard Hughes was flying a spy plane for the United States Army that he was testing out. And he was flying in proximity of Beverly Hills when his motors conked out. He had a mechanical problem and had to glide down. He was aiming for the Los Angeles golf course, which, if you know your Beverly Hills geography, you'll know that that's located adjacent to the Playboy Mansion, which wasn't called the Playboy Mansion yet. It was there. That Tudor-style mansion was built, I believe, in 1926. It's located at 10236 Charing Cross Road. And I believe it was built around 1926. And there it is. And Howard Hughes wants to land on the driving range. But he comes up short and he piles into 903 and 905, 2 houses on Linden Drive, North Linden Drive, which, by the way, that's 3 houses away from where Ben Seigel was murdered, shot in the head 9 times with the military rifle 1 year later. So Howard Hughes stoves into 2 homes on that same street on July 7th, 1945, a couple months after the Germans surrendered, and 1 month and a week before the Japanese surrendered. There's Howard Hughes in a pile of rubble, badly injured. I will post the link below. He's very badly injured in that crash, which is the beginning of lots of morphine for Howard Hughes after his plane crash in Beverly Hills / Holmby Hills, 2 blocks from Los Angeles Country Club golf course. He almost made it. Just came up 2 blocks short. Anyway, you should know that that is walking distance to Peter Falk, Columbo's home. You know, the Jewish man that plays an Italian policeman, Peter Falk. He lives at 1004 North Roxbury Drive. It's across Sunset Boulevard from the Howard Hughes crash site. It's technically 3/10 of a mile, which is about 450 yards away, something like that. About 450 yards away from where Bugsy Siegel lives, where Howard Hughes piled and stoved into 2 homes, destroying 2 homes. No one was hurt. I mean, no one was killed. Howard Hughes was harmed, but he wasn't killed. He survived the crash. All right. I wanted to let you know that the Federal Reserve Act was signed in December 23rd, 1913. Again, about 6 months after, not 6 months, about 9 months after Woodrow Wilson became the 28th president of the United States. Woodrow Wilson was an academic. He was a teacher. He was a professor. He eventually became, after doing, about 5 to 10 years of teaching and lecturing for 10 years, he was offered the position of president of Princeton University, where he also graduated, has a degree from Princeton. It was an all-male school, no girls. And he became the president of Princeton University, where he served for 8 years. He then went on to become the governor of New Jersey for 2 years. And then he became the president of the United States from 1913 to 1921 for 8 years. So he's an academic. So that's code for he has no clue on how the world works. None whatsoever. No idea. But no offense, neither did Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan was a professional Hollywood actor from Culver City, well, from Illinois originally, and then San Francisco, Presidio, and Crissy Fields, and Fort Mason, and then to Culver City to do propaganda films for the Army Airborne, and then on to the Screen Actors Guild for 6.5 years as president and Hollywood actor, mostly in Western cowboy films. So Woodrow Wilson died kind of young. He died at age 67. He died on February 3rd, 1924. And that is right when they were building Mulholland Drive Road out in Los Angeles. Now, it's kind of confusing for you folks that don't live in Los Angeles, because we've all been programmed about Mulholland Drive, which runs along the ridgeline of the Santa Monica mountain range, really from the Getty Museum off the San Diego Freeway, which we call 405, and it runs in a east-west direction over to the Ventura Highway, which is known as the Hollywood Freeway, which we call 101. So it goes from 405 to the 101, and where Mulholland Drive drops down to the Hollywood Freeway, there's the Hollywood Bowl to the right, to the south of where Mulholland Drive comes out. Now, there is such a place called Mulholland Highway, and it's in two completely different locations. One location is over by Malibu in the Malibu Mountains, that runs from Calabasas, where the porn center is, where Jose Menendez was renting a home when he was murdered in Beverly Hills, in a home that he didn't live in. Anyway, that's a very common theme in my videos, people. People getting murdered in homes that the media attributes to their home, but it's not their home, and they're not on the lease, and they don't rent it, but they're just there and they get killed. Happens a lot. Anyway, Mulholland Drive runs from Point Mugu, which is a Navy air base, 8 miles from the intersection of Pacific Coast Highway 1 and Mulholland Highway, which is 8 miles north of Point Dume, which is where Robert Kennedy Jr. and his lovely third wife, Cheryl Hines, Hollywood, COVID PCR narrative, they live 8 miles south of the Mulholland Highway and the Pacific Coast 1 intersection. 8 miles northwest is the Naval Air Base and Missile Site known as Point Mugu, spelled M-U-G-U. All right, so Point Dume is spelled D-U-M-M-E. If you go climb the Mulholland Highway, which Jay Leno features a lot because it's a tack run road that you can open up your sports car. There are corners and curves on it, but it's got a lot of straightaways too. Anyway, that'll eventually take you up to the top of Calabasas, and you can drop down to the Ventura Highway that way, over by Hidden Hills, and also where the neighborhood where Mel Gibson was detained at the sheriff's substation there in Lost Hills. It's called the Lost Hills Sheriff's Substation, and that is very close, within 1 mile of where Lisa Marie Presley just died of a heart attack. Perhaps she was vaccinated. They just won't say. They didn't call it a COVID death, so perhaps it's a vax death. I don't know. The media only tells you what they want you to be programmed to know, right? So the less information you have, the better it is for you to be a good, obedient zombie. Anyway, that's where Hidden Hills is. That's where Calabasas is. That's close to Canoga Park, the porn center for the world, is all right there. Anyway, then Mulholland Highway just sort of truncates out near near Encino. And we have Mulholland Drive. You pick up onto Mulholland Drive. And then you take that down to the Hollywood Freeway, which is the Ventura Highway, but they changed the name when it's over by Burbank and over by the Hollywood Bowl. And then you can climb up a reservoir known as the Hollywood Lake. It's the Hollywood Reservoir. And you'll end up by the Hollywood sign, and the name changes back to Mulholland Highway East. And there are cul-de-sacs known as Mulholland Highway off Mulholland Highway, just like Woodrow Wilson Drive off Woodrow Wilson Drive, just like Benedict Canyon Drive off Benedict Canyon Drive, just like Cielo Drive off Cielo Drive. Twice, once where the Sharon Tate murder happened, and a second time where it dead ends and there's like 5 homes above the Sharon Tate murder scene near the Enchanted Hillside, owned by the Paul Allen Land Trust, nonprofit. All right, so I want to give you a quick little update. You remember the Hollywood studios all commenced really during the, just slightly before the Woodrow Wilson presidency, which again was March 1913. But 1 year earlier, Universal Studios, with Jewish managers, was created in 1912. That was the very first Hollywood studio. Then we had to wait 11 years before Warner Brothers, which was the 4 Jewish brothers known as the Wonsal brothers, Wonsal, but they changed their name to Warner because it sounds less Jewish. So you have 4 Jewish brothers named Wonsal, and they found Warner Brothers in 1923. Simultaneously with Walt and Roy Disney founding the Disney Brothers Studios in 1923 also. The next year we had CBS Columbia Broadcasting System entering the game with Columbia Pictures. CBS, the Masonic Evil Eye, created Columbia Pictures in 1924. 1924 also we had Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, again 2, 3, or 4 Jewish men partnerships known as MGM, or as Dean Martin called it, Megam. And then in 1928 we had the Joseph P. Kennedy, the father of John Kennedy, working with several Jewish people on a partnership to create RKO Radio Pictures in 1928, right? Anyway, so that's Universal Studios, Warner Brothers, Disney Studios, Columbia Pictures, MGM, and RKO Radio Pictures, which is 6. Those are the 6 major Hollywood studios, and they were all created between 1912 and 1928. In other words, that's quick like a bunny rabbit. That's bang, 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 bang. Over a 16-year period, you have 6 major studios because of the technology and being able to use motion pictures in theaters, which previously were used for vaudevillian live entertainment, and now we're converting it to scripted, edited video, film, social engineering messaging. It's all to do with the technology. And this is all going on after the Marconi Company and RCA formed a partnership. And it's all radio technology, and that was developed then during World War I and perfected during World War II. And this is where Woodrow Wilson is the president, because he takes the presidency in 1913, and the next year we have World War I, and that thing runs until 1918. And of course, Woodrow Wilson, as a Democrat, vows never to be involved in World War I, but of course he breaks his word in his 3rd year of presidency. So in 1917, the United States enters World War I. Thankfully, it only goes a year, and we have a truce in 1918, which is documented and formalized with the Paris Peace Conference and the Treaty of Versailles, which of course handcuffs Germany into abject poverty and leads us to World War II. It sets up World War II. The League of Nations was established at this time around 1918 as part of the Paris Peace Conference, and Woodrow Wilson is credited as being a big advocate of the League of Nations. My problem with the League of Nations, of course, is it's in Geneva, Switzerland, which later becomes home to the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the Red Cross. So it is also painfully obvious that the League of Nations did not prevent World War II, did it? What's the point of having a League of Nations if you continue as if it didn't exist, right? See, so war happens if a bank decides. It has nothing to do with the League of Nations or the WHO. It has to do with what the bankers decide in a private conference room. Because we established the United Nations in New York City after World War II. And it hasn't prevented any war since. I mean, America has been continuously at war during the entire existence of the United Nations. So I don't think you can say that the UN has done anything other than give money to NATO, which is the one world army. It's really just a cover for NATO forces. You know, the people that killed Sharon Tate, the people who killed Dr. Victor Oda. That's who NATO is, all right, in case you're wondering. Anyway, there are 12 banking districts in the United States. That's what you need to know. The Council of Foreign Relations was established also in New York City, and the CFR was established in 1921 on July 29th, 1921. And it's a one world order concept. It shares a wall with the Knickerbocker Club. It's kind of like the Bohemian Club for New York City. Knickerbocker Club. I believe it's in the same building as the Council for Foreign Relations. If it's not, it's across the street. I mean, it's same zip code. Council for Foreign Relations. It's in the embassy part of Manhattan, East Side. All right, what I wanted to tell you is that while Woodrow Wilson was president, after he died in 1924, they named one of the side streets off of Mulholland Drive after him. That probably was 1926-27. And that's where Natalie Wood was moved into in 1951-52 into 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive. And that's where Natalie Wood was put as a teenager, a young teenager, into that home, which is gated. And it's exactly a duplicate, more or less, of the Cielo Drive crime scene. You certainly could have had the Sharon Tate murder at the Natalie Wood home. They're very similar. Very similar. Swimming pool, multiple garages, perimeter homes, all controlled by the clandestine services on a blind cul-de-sac. It's, 8 miles to the east, but it's almost a copycat image of the Cielo Drive crime scene in Benedict Canyon, the 7708 Cielo Drive, which Cass Elliot ended up moving into and was living in when Sharon Tate was murdered. And you know that Cass Elliot is Jewish, right? And Cass Elliot, her real name, is different than advertised, right? Her name is Ellen Naomi Cohen. Ellen Naomi Cohen is Jewish, and she was eventually murdered in the Mayfair district of London, which I've personally been 1 block from this crime scene. She was killed in flat number 12 at number 9 Curzon Place on on July 29th, 1974. Cass Elliot, who was residing at 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive, she had her belongings there. But she was murdered in London while she was residing in Laurel Canyon at 7708 Woodrow Wilson Drive. Cass Elliot murdered in London, which is about 2 blocks from the Playboy Club where Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski had their fake Friday night cocktail party reception for their fake wedding, because I don't believe they were actually married, but they were for television. Anyway, that's where Cass Elliot was killed, 2 blocks from the Playboy Club and the Grand Sheraton Hotel across the street from Green Park, which is a magnificent park in the Mayfair district. Anyway, you should also know that 4 years later, Keith Moon, of the drummer for The Who, was murdered in that exact apartment, number 12, 9 Curzon Place, Mayfair. Same room, same exact bedroom as Cass Elliot 4 years after. And that was on September 7th, 1978. Anyway, this is part 1. Part 2 is going to be discussing with you the timeline of the Hollywood Bowl, the Hollywood sign Billboard, the Hollywood Reservoir renamed Lake Hollywood, the construction of Castillo del Lago, which is the home that Madonna lived after Ben Seigel resided in this home, just below or next to the Hollywood sign. It's just, like 20 feet below. I mean, it's real close. And we're going to discuss some other homicides in this zip code of West Hollywood, which is what this is. Thanks for listening. Hit the like and subscribe. Take care.